This is now officially the new Orbea Orca. We've seen one being ridden in the Tour de France with a stealth paint job, but details were sketchy. Now though, here it is in all its glory. Actually, this is even better than all its glory because this weighs 700 grams less than the bike being ridden in the Tour de France. They've given us the super pimped out version. This is just 6.16 kilos, the lightest bike I'll have ever ridden. So this is actually the 5th generation of the Orbea Orca. The first was released back in 2003, and that you'll be familiar with, I'm sure, because it was ridden to great acclaim by the Euskaltel-Euskadi team, particularly guys like Iban Mayer. And then latter generations used by Samuel Sanchez, for example, to win the Olympic gold medal in the road race in Beijing. And Matt very kindly did a bit of research on a recent video to find out exactly why it's called the Orca, and it turns out it's actually got nothing to do with killer whales. No, it's because the OR is the beginning of Orbea, and then the CA is the beginning of carbon, so Orca. Shame they didn't call their first aluminium bike the Oral, isn't it? But anyway, right, stop sniggering at the back. Now, when Orbea set out to design this new generation of the Orca, they wanted to make, they said, the most efficient bike, because they say efficiency will get you from A to B the quickest. And so an efficient bike is one that does everything well, but yet doesn't necessarily sacrifice any of the others in pursuit of one goal. So, for example, it's not so aerodynamic that it becomes heavy, it's still lightweight, but it's not so light that it loses stiffness, and then it's not so stiff that it loses comfort. And it's a pretty solid theory. If you've got one bike, you want it to do everything well, and perhaps that is where the optimum handling and feeling kind of bike lies. Sorry, got a bit carried away there. You want to hear about the bike. Let's go over those aims then, shall we? First up, weight. And Orbea have managed to get this down to 795 grams for the frame, and the fork is just 315 grams. So, pretty darn impressive. The disc version is slightly more, 840 grams and 335 grams respectively. And one of the ways in which they've done it, aside from manipulating tube shapes and so forth, is actually in the carbon manufacturing process. And so the way the sheets of carbon are cut is so accurate, they can actually minimize wastage when the frame is laid up. So there is essentially the minimum amount of overlap needed to make the frame. What about number 2 then, aerodynamics? Well, I will forgive you, from this angle the frame doesn't look excessively optimized for aerodynamics, apart from perhaps the smoothing over of the seat collar there and that really nice looking built-in seat clamp. That does look like a nod to aerodynamics. But actually, when you take a look at the front of the bike, head on, which is where aerodynamics really are most important, you can see that an awful lot of work has gone into it. The fork has been totally redesigned. And so it's borrowed a lot of the technology from Orbea's time trial bike, the Urdu. And basically what they've done is the fork legs stay wider for longer, and that essentially minimises the turbulence between the fork legs and the spokes of the rim. And they say it saves 4 watts at 40k an hour. So that is a significant saving, and it does mean that it is in fact aero optimised. Now, we still haven't finished with the fork quite yet. It's now also semi-integrated into the frame, so that's going to improve aerodynamics as well. And it's also shorter, it's 5mm shorter than previous, so that is going to drop a stack on the bike as well. So for those of you that like to get long and low, that's going to give you that. Stiffness, well, the previous Orca was pretty darn stiff, but this one apparently in the lab tests even stiffer than that at the bottom bracket. But again, coming back to that front fork, which has seen considerable redesign, that's now 26% stiffer laterally and 20% stiffer frontally. Now that might not sound like a good thing, but it is, because one of the big factors governing how well your bike handles is the stiffness of the front end, and a lot of that comes from the fork as well. So the confidence to carve through corners, or the reassurance you get when you're sprinting really hard. So a stiffer fork is a better fork. And what about the last one then, comfort? Haven't got any figures to bamboozle you with, but from riding it very briefly and also just from looking at it, you can tell that quite a bit of work has gone into that as well, particularly the seat stays, which are now pencil thin. And that is a really, really important factor governing the comfort of a frame. So what else have we got then? Well, the Orca is moving with the times. The clearance for tyres has increased quite significantly. So you could, I would imagine, quite comfortably put 28C tyres on there. And that's what Orbea recommend as well. So I guess you could probably squeeze 30s on because manufacturers tend to be quite conservative. And then one nice little upgrade, which I think is particularly cool, is the fact that the reach and stack measurements across all the sizes have been aligned. So actually, whereas previously they might have chopped and changed a little bit, now there's a consistency. Then actually all sizes will have a proportional reach and stack, and also even the handling, so the trail of the bike has also been tweaked as well across all the sizes. So no matter whether you ride a 48 or a 59, you will get the same feel from your bike. This being 2016, there is of course a disc brake version of this bike. Already mentioned that in the weight section, but it's going to be really interesting to find out when, or indeed if, that bike is going to be able to be ridden in the World Tour and the Pro Peloton. Fingers crossed it will. Oh, and if you're wondering just what is it like to ride a 6.16 kilo bike, the answer is it's really fast. Like serious, bonkersly fast. I'm quite excited. Anyway, that bike that is being ridden in the Tour de France by Geoffroy Soup that I mentioned earlier, if you want to see the pro bike, the full version of it, then if you click just up there, you get through to that video. Or to see Matt actually riding the first generation, the 2003 Orca, which he got to do down in the Pyrenees not so long ago, click just down there. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe to GCN. To do that, just click on the globe.